Hey guys, and welcome to the first video in the new Materials of Backpacking series that I'm doing. And today, since it's the first video, I figured I would focus on the most ubiquitous and widespread material in all of backpacking, really, and that is Ripstop Nylon. You will see this material in pretty much any piece of gear you have that requires a material. It's everywhere, it's widespread. There are a lot of variations on it, and a lot of the materials I'll be going into in the future in this series, like the proprietary materials like M90, argon, stuff like that, they're just slight variations on Ripstop Nylon. Maybe a different woven pattern or a different base thread, but really everything kind of comes from Ripstop Nylon. And so you'll find this everywhere. I mean, you can see here's a stuff sack made of Ripstop Nylon. In the stuff sack is the DIY hammock I've made. That's made of Ripstop Nylon, slightly heavier Ripstop. Backpacks are often made of Ripstop Nylon or some form of it. This is an old REI brain, and that's made of Ripstop. This is a Big Agnes tent. It's made of Ripstop, as is the bag that's holding it. And so, I mean, you can see this is everywhere. You're going to run into it quite often. And really, in the DIY world, it makes a great place to start making gear. It's perfect for pretty much anything. Yes, there are materials that are generally better for specific things that you may want to do. Some materials may be lighter, but Ripstop is a good place to start. It's certainly more than adequate for pretty much any application in backpacking. So, what is Ripstop? Well, it's a nylon material woven in a pattern. If you can see, hopefully up here, there's a grid pattern woven into the material, and that grid is made of slightly stronger nylon threads, and that helps reinforce the fabric. It makes it stronger, and it keeps it from tearing if it ever gets punctured. You can see here on this Big Agnes tent thing, it has been torn before. Basically, it was cut, probably with a knife or something, but it's no longer tearing further just because of this reinforcing grid that is helping keep this fabric from tearing. So you can see it works really great in backpacking applications. The material itself was invented around World War II. It was used as a replacement for parachute material, which was at the time made of silk, which was becoming expensive and a little hard to find, so Ripstop Nylon was developed as a replacement for that. And obviously they needed something that was strong and lightweight, and that's why it's so good for backpacking. Now, there are different grades of Ripstop Nylon, and they differentiate between the grades based on a weight. So if you go online to order Ripstop Nylon, you'll see many options. You'll see 1.1 ounce Ripstop Nylon, 1.9 ounce Ripstop Nylon. And what that means is 1 square yard of that material weighs 1.1 ounces. Or 1 square yard of that material weighs 1.9 ounces. So obviously, as you go up in weight, you get a stronger, slightly more durable material that is better suited for heavier use applications. So what does that mean? Well, if you're making a pack, you would probably want to use a heavier Ripstop Nylon, just because that pack's going to be set down on rocks, it's going to be scraping trees. So I would stick with maybe a 1.9 ounce per yard Ripstop Nylon for a backpack or a tent application. Now on the lighter end, 1.1 ounce Ripstop Nylon is perfect for stuff sacks, down materials, and any sort of lightweight, maybe like a jacket that you would want to make. And there are better options out there, which I will go into later in this series, but as a baseline, Ripstop Nylon is great for all of those applications. So one other way to measure Ripstop Nylon is using the denier system. You'll sometimes see in parentheses beside the 1.1 ounce Ripstop Nylon 30D, and that represents 30 denier. It's just another way of gauging how strong the fabric is, basically. And 1 denier represents 1 gram per 9,000 meters, I think it is, of material. And so that, I know that's kind of hard to understand, but basically it means that as you go up in denier, the material gets stronger. Same thing as you go up in ounces per square yard. So a 1.1 ounce per square yard Ripstop Nylon is around 30 denier. A 1.9 ounce per square yard Ripstop Nylon is around 70 denier. So you can see how the scale kind of works there. I find it most useful just to stick to the weights. It's a lot easier and simpler. So that's kind of the background on the material. If you go online, you can buy this material for about $5 maybe per linear yard. And a linear yard is a yard long, but it may vary in width, and it's normally around 55 to 60 inches wide. So it's actually wider than a yard. You get more material than just a square yard. And there's also all different sorts of variations on it. Sil nylon, which I will actually cover in a different video, is just ripstop nylon that's been impregnated with silicone so it repels water. And I know a lot of the heavier pack materials like the Spectra type materials are just ripstop nylon, except the grid is formed of Spectra, which is much stronger than nylon. And so that's kind of the basics of the material. If you're working with down, I will say you want to get a material that is downproof, and a lot of times a calendared ripstop nylon is going to be downproof. What is calendared? That just means that during production, after the material was finished, it was kind of pressed between two hot steel rollers, and that kind of compacts the fibers, makes them stick together tighter, so it keeps down from poking through the material much better. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to be making something out of down that's meant to contain down, you need to make sure that the ripstop nylon can contain it adequately. And that means searching for a calendared or a downproof ripstop. Not all of them are, so just be careful with that. One other thing to keep in mind is if this fabric is going to be doing a lot of rubbing, like if this were, say, the bottom of your tent, it'll be rubbing the ground pretty often. The little ridges that are sewn in on a grid can kind of lead to an increased stress on the material. So because there are little ridges in here, it may tend to wear out a little faster. So ripstop may not be the best option for high use, high friction areas. What may be better in those situations is what's known as a taffeta, and that is a kind of a ripstop without the grid. It's much smoother, so it tends to slide on each other. Taffeta on taffeta will slide much better than ripstop on ripstop, which the little grids tend to catch and wear down the material. So keep that in mind. That's almost all I need to cover on the kind of the specs on the material. And so that kind of leaves me with tips. What tips do I have for working with ripstop? Well, know what weight you need. Most times 1.1 ounce is going to be sufficient for a hammock or any other material. A tent would be fine with that. If you are a heavier person or if you want a more durable product, go with a heavier weight. But 1.1 ounce is a good baseline. That'll do almost anything you need it to. You can go lighter for lighter applications and heavier for heavy duty stuff. When you are sewing ripstop nylon, you want to use a thread that is 100% polyester. You don't want to use a cotton thread, and that's because the cotton thread, when exposed to moisture, as is common in the backpacking world, it tends to wear down quicker and break down, kind of degrade, whereas a polyester thread on 100% will hold itself much better and it'll last much longer. So just keep that in mind. I think that's about it. I really don't have too many other specific tips just for ripstop nylon that aren't just kind of general sewing tips. So with that, I will bid you adieu and see you next time. There will be more to come. If you have any materials or types of things you want to see, just leave them in the comments below and I'll try to get to them later. See you later.